Hi everyone, this is Banu Hantal, leader psychologist, and today I'm with David Brown, founder and co-CEO of Techstars. To start with, can you tell us?
I laugh because I think you're going to ask me about that.
Exactly, the co-CEO is that we see the co-founder and CEO title, but then we have the co-CEO title that's not very common. I definitely want to talk about that, but before that, can you explain about Techstars and what you guys do?
Yeah, of course. Techstars, we call ourselves the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed. We fundamentally do three different things. We run startup accelerators all around the world. We've been doing that for 12 years. We have 45 programs in 13 different countries where we bring in companies 10 at a time and over 3 months help them to rapidly accelerate their business, partly by investing in them and giving them up to $120,000 in return for a little bit of equity. So we're partners with them in terms of helping them succeed. That's thing one. Thing two is we run startup weekends and startup weeks all around the world, 120 different countries, 1,000 events a year. It's a week-long experience of what it's like to be an entrepreneur that you can go through over the course of a weekend. And then we're a full-blown venture capital firm investing out of our fourth fund, which is a $150 million fund. So those are some of the highlights.
Awesome. And tell me more about co-CEO title and how does co-CEO relationship work?
So I wrote a blog post on it entitled Why Having Co-CEOs is a Terrible Idea, Almost Always. And I have a bit of a unique situation in that I have a co-founder and my co-CEO, David Cohen. He and I have known each other for almost 30 years now. So yes, since we were 8. Not true, since we were in our 20s. And we have done a whole number of startups together. We started Techstars together in 2000. The idea was 2006, and the first program was in 2007. And we did it because we wanted to pay it forward and help other entrepreneurs be successful. And the reason the co-CEO works, I think, is because we've known each other for so long. In those 30 years, sometimes, I was CEO and he was, CTO. Sometimes he had a title bigger than mine. Sometimes we had the same title that nobody would understand. And it was only a few years ago that we decided to adopt the co-CEOs because our third co-founder and board member, Brad Feld, just suggested it to us and said, that's how you guys operate. And while I never see it work in general, it seems to work for you. So we did it.
It's amazing. Working with someone for 30 years and you had multiple companies. And am I safe to assume some of them were successes and some of them were failures?
Absolutely.
So you've been together for the successes and for the failures. And what is it that makes it's so hard that you see it every day to make that relationship work? And we always say it's sometimes harder than working a marriage, even co-founder relationship. So what do you think makes you different in a way that you were able to go through highs and lows and then still wanting to do this together after 30 years?
Yeah, there are similarities to a
like
marriage.
Your name?
And there are similarities to our name, absolutely. I think that the reason it worked, and it wasn't a deliberate thing on our part, we sort of fell into it accidentally, but very, very early on, we worked at the same startup, but we weren't the co-founder. We worked for the CEO or the founder. And we sort of viewed him as, I call it common enemy, but he was a good guy, so enemy is the wrong term. But, he had dreams of sort of conquering the world, and we were implementing sort of that vision into reality. And we struggled with it sometimes, and we would get together and we would talk about, oh my God, this is happening, that's happening, what are we going to do? And so we sort of formed this common bond, this foundation of trust very, very early on. Through that shared experience working for the same person. And I would say similar to what might happen in a strong personal relationship, that sort of led to getting to know each other really well as people. Back then we were roommates, so work was fun, and fun was work. And, we spent an awful lot of time together at that time. Neither of us were married and neither of us had children. And so it all sort of blended together and we got to know each other really, really well. And I think that foundation that was poured 30 years ago sort of allows us today to be able to operate much better together, in that, as in any co-founder relationship, it's super important to know when the other person is up or down, and maybe know that without them actually telling you, so that you can sort of anticipate that you have to take a little bit more of the load because maybe they have something going on in their personal life, knowing that they'll do the same for you when your time comes.
Yeah.
So
do you feel
our
like
history.
it naturally evolved, like your relationship dynamic, or was there some intention behind it, saying that, okay, to make this work and then to make sure that we are strong, we have to do this or that? Did you have conversations along those lines, or did it organic?
It was mostly organic. Certainly every once in a while we might have a conversation about, is there something to course correct? But people laugh at us like we're an old married couple, in that we communicate even non-verbally in meetings and other places, in that I know him so well and he knows me so well that we've just figured out how to make it work without having to have a lot of communication.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. And you mentioned that there was a time where you were higher on the hierarchy, there was a time he was higher on the hierarchy. Did you feel that there was ego tensions playing a role, or you were comfortable with each other enough?
Well, it's interesting because I think it's a very relevant point. When I said I was higher on the hierarchy or he was, I mean I had a higher title or he had a higher title. But the way we treated each other was always as equals, 100%.
Wow,
and that's the reason why we adopted the Co-CEO title, because if you're going to act that way, you might as well call it.
I see. So you were saying the title seemed that there was a hierarchy, but in reality, in the way you treated each other and the way you worked with each other, it was a relationship of equals. There was no power gap between you.
Exactly. And I think also it was all formed in it. First we were, employee 1 and 2 at the same startup. Then we did our own startup together. We were equals on the cap table. Right. And so there was just so many ways that we forged this relationship as equals, that even if the titles were hierarchical, because somebody had to be CEO, we didn't naturally feel that way or act that way.
Interesting.
One interesting thing when we adopted it, though, finally, one of the reasons we had the hierarchy titles was because we thought, well, you don't want to have sort of 2 CEOs and everybody feels, the employees feel they have to go to each. And so when we finally did it at Techstars, we adopted some rules around making sure that there wasn't sort of playing mom against dad kind of scenario. And the rule was you only need one yes. That if either of us said yes, that was good enough. And it's our responsibility to sort that out and communicate on the back end, because we didn't want to slow the organization down by having people feel like they had to go to 2 people to move forward on a decision. But there was a corollary to the rule that we were also worried about. So the corollary is you only get 1 no. And know that we communicate. So if I say no, you can't go to David to see if he's going to say yes, and vice versa.
Yes. And how was the reaction to when you first decided to adopt the title? Did you, in the company, people were confused in a way that you had to put these roles for that? But
I would say not at all, right? And I think it's because we always acted that way. And I think the reaction was more duh.
Yeah.
And people refer to us as the Davids.
The Davids.
Yeah, I have to go ask the Davids, and they might meet either of us. And we do have separate responsibility. We don't exactly do the same thing in the company, and so people generally know who to come to.
I see. So you guys were lucky to have found each other, and I think also did something really right, so that you have this awesome relationship, a co-founder relationship, but it doesn't work for everybody. And did you see the cautionary tales of where co-founder relationship actually made or broke the startup?
Well, it happens all the time. We were talking off camera earlier about the study that says 65% of companies fail because of co-founder issues. Not because they run out of money, not because they had a terrible idea, not because they couldn't get customers, but because of co-founder issues. And we see it all the time. About one in every class when we run our accelerators has a co-founder breakup. So 1 out of 10%. And it's significant enough that we try to, and that's just during the 3-month period, right? Many happen later, of course, too. So it's significant enough that we want to spend time helping with that. And I think my number one piece of advice on that cautionary tale, as you describe it, is invest the time to get to know your co-founder personally. You don't have to be co-CEOs. That's for us. That's not important. But you do have a co-founder, and they have a personal life, and maybe things aren't going well at home. Maybe a loved one is sick, right? Maybe they're down for financial reasons or something else. And sort of really understanding where they are will help the relationship tremendously. Don't think of it as, work is work and home is home. If you don't know that home impacts work, you're fooling yourself, right? It is absolutely connected.
So are you saying it has to go beyond work relationship? You have to build a relationship with the person?
Yes. It is very much like a significant other. You have to have a date night, right? It might not end the same way, but it is the same.
I actually have my clients go on dinner dates. I do get them to have other than work settings so that they sometimes build or rekindle.
Yes, and you ask them not to talk about work.
Yes, definitely. That's more about talking about their relationship. That's a conversation they have about the way they relate to each other, how they feel in that relationship.
Exactly. I think it's incredibly important, and I can't imagine any better preventative medicine towards a co-founder relationship.
Another thing that comes up very frequently, the co-founders who were friends before they started the company. And sometimes I feel they have a harder time to communicate than the co-founders. They know each other from a work setting, but they don't have very strong friendship before they begin because they are worried to damage the relationship or hurt the other person, so they are not really communicating everything. Did you observe that they have difficulties when they are friends before? Do you think it's an advantage or disadvantage?
So I think it can be both. I think it's an advantage because you know the person on a personal level. Right? And so when we're saying you should go have a life dinner and talk about these things, they already have that coming in, which I think is a huge advantage. And we've seen some great founders come through our programs that sort of met in the 6th grade and have been friends ever since. The disadvantage is the startup is hard. And if you don't get along with your co-founder and you have a breakup, that can infect your personal relationship too. And so, there's probably a dynamic that keeps you from having a hard conversation at work because you don't want to damage the friendship. And that's probably not a good thing. You want to be able to have somebody that you can have that hard conversation with. All right.
Awesome. Thank you very much.